Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Welcome to another edition of Probier TV Live. You see, everything is live, and I'm very excited. Maybe I forgot to unrelease the mute button. Probier TV is a video blog from Vienna, Austria, and my name is Martin. I'm the host for several live beer talks, and we talk to brewers, we talk to breweries, and we found out about the stories behind the beers. But today is a very special edition because the brewer and the brewery we're talking with is located in the Ukraine, and I don't have to tell you anything about the current situation in the Ukraine. Just join me saying hello, Yuri. Hello, Lviv.
Hello, Martin. How are you doing?
It sounds like a dumb question, but how are you?
It depends who you ask in Ukraine. With a little bit of natural and geographical luck, we are in Lviv, which is pretty much far in the west of Ukraine. And talking the local standards, Lviv is exactly the place where many refugees from the other places in Ukraine are going to. This was the place when Kyiv was attacked. This was the place where hundreds of thousands of people of Kyiv came to, and this is now the refuge place for people from the south and from the east of Ukraine. So in Lviv, we are relatively fine.
That's good to hear. So if there's anything happening during our talk that would cause us to, or cause you to leave, please just let us know, and we'll start again later on. So no worries about that. Let's split our talk into two sections. Let's talk about your brewery first. The name of the brewery is Pravda Brewing, and you're in Lviv. How long are you existing?
It's now about 7.5 years. We opened in the end of 2014.
So you're in terms of other breweries, are you one of the first wavers with the craft beer movement in Ukraine, or are you in the middle, or is 7 years old for a craft beer brewery in Ukraine?
Well, I think in many European countries, 7 years for a craft brewery is already a decent age.
Yes, it is.
In Ukraine, we are definitely one of the first craft breweries. Probably not the first. We were not really finding this out. But yes, we have opened actually almost at the height of some historical for Ukraine moments, when Crimea was occupied, when there was already the Maidan revolution, and all the events that led to the start of the modern day Ukraine. So we're actually growing together with the country.
That's good to hear. What kind of beers does Pravda brew? Are you concentrating on the more modern styles, or do you do almost everything? I saw on the homepage you have a large variety of beers, but which beers is Pravda known for?
All right. Well, it's kind of hard to say, and there is a reason to that. Let me explain. We are 4 entrepreneurs from Lviv. We decided to put together some investment to open Pravda Brewery. And none of us, we are all Ukrainian entrepreneurs. We are all from Lviv, originally from Lviv. And our decision was not to make an American-style brewery, because we're not Americans. It was not the idea to open an easy way and to capitalize on the world-known German beers. We also didn't open a German brewery. And we also didn't open a Czech brewery, not even a UK brewery. So we decided to open a Ukrainian brewery. And now the question is, what is a Ukrainian brewery? And there is not yet a full answer to that. And it's been 7 years that we are trying to work on that answer. For us, it's actually, we opened to, in the first place, to try to demonstrate in Ukraine, which is a pretty big country, to demonstrate that beer is not only the blonde lager and then the blanche and then the dark beer, but there is a whole variety of styles and geographies and a lot of geopolitical history to beers. that made it so exciting and different. That was the one thing. Another thing, we wanted to say to the world, look, Ukraine is geographically Europe's biggest country. If you talk about geographical country, which is totally in Europe, which means this means the geographical size just leads to big botanical diversity. This means we can use a lot of different spices, different berries, different vegetables or mixes of these to create specific Ukrainian beer styles. But first, before doing a specific Ukrainian beer styles, it's not that easy. You just have to learn to make your basic Belgian triple or basic Bohemian Pilsner or a good quality West Coast IPA or whatnot, whatever style. So we started with brewing basically any possible style in the beginning to try to master the technology. And we are now only nearing really the case of becoming a really Ukrainian brewer with some of the beer styles that we think begin the new age Ukrainian craft brewing that use local ingredients and local technologies. So a brief answer to your question, we brew many different styles to learn how to brew, but still we always half looking into creating specific Ukrainian beer styles that might be later in some years might be even in the competitions as beer styles.
Right. But is there a beer that you would say that Pravda is really known for? If there's a specific beer, if people think about Pravda and it comes to their mind, which beer would that be?
If you talk about the most widespread and democratic beer, that would be the beer called Zenik, which is basically a West Ukrainian common guy's name. And we are proud of this beer because this is a deceptively easy beer to, it looks a deceptively easy beer. It's easy to drink. It's a blonde, 5% blonde ale. But we specifically, it took us 3 years to develop this beer to the level it is at now, because we decided to brew it with Ukrainian, totally with Ukrainian malt and with Ukrainian hops. So this is pretty much the terroir beer of every day, made entirely with Ukrainian ingredients. That's on one scale. On a slightly more extreme scale, we have a imperial stout, a heavy, thick imperial stout, the way it should be, but it's infused with Ukrainian smoked pears and smoked plums, which provides it with a very smoky and fruity additional flavor. And for me, this is probably as close as it gets to the real Ukrainian style. It rests on a solid international imperial stout, but it has this specific DNA to it that is coming totally from Ukraine.
Okay. We might have to talk a little bit about the name of the brewery also, because it's named Pravda Beer Theatre. It's not Pravda Brewery, Pravda Craft Beer Brewery, but what is the term Beer Theatre standing for? And another thing I have to say, sorry to the users watching at home, we have some difficulties because the internet connection from you to Zoom is not too good, and we have the picture going freezing sometime, but the audio is perfect, so we continue like that. As long as we can hear you, it's perfectly fine. So once again, the question: what is the term Pravda Beer Theatre? What kind of theater is going on there?
Okay, so I have to talk a little history here, and please tell me if I'm too long, but I try to keep my answers to like 1-2 minutes. We started as basically as a brew pub, where everything was together. We opened a brewery in a building in a central location in the main square of the city of Lviv, which is in normal times has about 0.8 million inhabitants, but it's pretty historical place. Imagine in Munich, for example, imagine Hofbräuhaus, but a lot smaller, of course. Yeah, Hofbräuhaus has thousands of seats, and we have only 700 seats, but still for Ukraine and for most of East Europe, it's a big place. And what we did, we tried to fit a brewery in there, and we did this. And the first 3.5 years, it was a combination of a brewery and the restaurant. And the restaurant is shaped in the way of a theater. So it's basically a huge, big loft common space. And we have decided to have a special attraction there. And the attraction is called Pravda Orchestra. So we basically have an orchestra playing in normal times, playing every day except Monday. And people normally enjoy our beers with the sound of live music, which is brass and drum, only live. But after 3.5 years, we realized that we are stuck in this building as a brewery, and it took us several months of planning and several weeks of execution, and we moved the brewery totally out of the central location to a new one, and we added a lot more tanks, and we grew this brewery 3 times since then. So the name of Pravda Beer Theatre still belongs to the restaurant in the city center, but the brewery is now called Pravda Brewery.
But the beer theater is still existing.
It still exists as a big beer restaurant, which is imagine that this is our huge tap room in the city center, which is about 2.5 kilometers from the brewery.
Okay, but talking about your beers again, they have always been, or there have been some beers that have always had some political influence. I can remember the Obama beer, Obama Hope. I think it was 2014 with the Crimea thing going on. Then we had, of course, the Trump beer, and we have a Angela Merkel beer, which was Frau Ribbentrop. And now, of course, there's a beer that we're going to talk a little bit later on with Putin. So politics has always been around with Pravda Brewery.
Well, yes, it has. On the other hand, we also have lots of other beer series which are centered around the art or the history of Ukraine. Or we have also a lot of neutral labels that just signify the technology of the beer making. For example, we have the labels which are very technical. They just a little bit similar to the Molen labels. The Molen, it's a Dutch brewery that has a very simple label design. So we also have that. But we do have the political labels, and we are often taken on a face value as a political brewery. Which is yes and no. We are not political in the way that we are not politicians. We don't take much sides except of our. It's about the fact that we see ourselves a little bit like storytellers about what actually happens in the world related to Ukraine. There was a moment in history when Obama could do something about the rise of a possible new dictator in the world, and that's why we call this beer Obama Hope. And the label says also in English that Obama has that chance to go down in history as someone who has prevented the new dictator to enter the world scene. And as we see, he has failed, and the same happened to Angela Merkel. We don't just do labels out of fun or out of hype or something, but they're all related to individuals or politicians that in one way or another influence or can influence what can happen or what is happening in Ukraine. So that's why Trump, Trudeau, Putin, Merkel, Obama, they all have been heroes or anti-heroes of our labels.
Gotcha.
Another thing, just quick another thing. When we were opening the brewery, and as I mentioned, we always intended, we put our processes and our technologies and our technology in the way that would always allow far exports. Yeah. For example, as we talk now, a container with our beer is making its way from Tallinn to Japan. Wow. And soon we hope to ship the first container to the United States. Therefore, we need to use the technology that protects this beer in this long journey, because we know it's not always easy with shipments. Yeah, so we re-ferment the bottle, which adds more stability to the beer. It's still unfiltered, unpasteurized. But my message is that when we intended to export, for example, if I sent my 5,000 bottles of whatever beer with any political hero to Austria, yeah, I see
and you did. I have beer.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. It's a good start, actually.
Yeah, it is.
It's a Pilsner. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Okay. So we intended to export, and while we intended to export, I want 5,000 Austrians, when they buy a more expensive imported beer, I would like them to take at least 10 seconds to read the label, to look at the label, to enjoy or dislike the design, whatever, and at least to read the message. And well, not in this beer.
No.
And in those beers, if I see this, yeah, in that beer, definitely. Yes, exactly. So for me, it's like 5,000 small messages that are going to end up at several thousand Austrian tables. And I want my small Ukrainian message to be heard and to be read.
That's a good way to spread news using beer, and it makes the people getting a little bit more involved to what's going on, and this is also why we are doing this talk tonight, because you get so much information through the news, but it's always about the fights going on, where the battlegrounds are, but you know so little about the people behind in the country. What are they doing? How is their everyday life? And as we see tonight, the internet connection is not too good, but there's internet. What kind of everyday routines do you have, or do you have a rather normal life at the moment, if you can call it a normal life? Are you still working Monday to Friday in the brewery as you did before the war?
Again, it depends who you ask. If you ask me, in Lviv, life is pretty much normal. Yeah. The only, well, in the beginning it was a little bit more anxious. There were more roadblocks, and the whole atmosphere.
So we're losing you.
Intense,
and you're back.
And you know what can happen. What can I do to? Can you hear me?
Yeah, but you were scrambled for 10 seconds. Sorry.
Okay. So I'll quickly say that in the beginning it was a bit more intense, and but now it's like a normal summer life. Yeah, it's you still don't travel that much because you have roadblocks, disruptions, because people are checked for diversants or for any suspicious activities. The shops are full of food, the taxis, the public transport's all operating. The trains across the country, for example, if I want to travel from Lviv to Kyiv, which is about 60 kilometers, it takes much slower because trains take a safer speed. Instead of 160, they go like 100 kilometers per hour for safety, because there can be rockets, there can be some diversions, and
Sure.
there can be some other disruptions. But otherwise, here it's pretty normal. In Kyiv, it's a little bit more. Kyiv was under attack 2 months ago. It was still under pretty aggressive attacks. The Russians tried to take over the capital, but bad luck. I would never imagine that they would take over Kyiv or something like this. And if you talk Kharkiv and Odessa, they have almost daily rocket attacks. Like Odessa had one this morning.
Yeah.
Kharkiv has it almost daily. So it pretty much depends on how close you are to the active fighting zone.
But you said that the supermarkets are full, so there's not a shortage on food. at least in Lviv. The story might be different in the east. But to run a business, how is it to get, for example, for the beer, to get the ingredients? Is that still possible? Is it working? The delivery services, the truck and lorry services to get the logistics ready?
Yes. It was almost totally blocked for the first 2 months, and we were actually almost locked down as a manufacturer because our tanks were full of beer, but we couldn't sell because there was a total ban on alcohol in the country, or well, in most areas of the country. Then it was relaxed, and then we started to do more exports. So then we started to brew more, but still, from the business point of view, our business is depressed by about 40% at least. Yeah, still, I would never complain about this because we do have occasional rocket attacks here in Lviv because the Russians tried to attack the logistical and railway infrastructure because they understand that a lot of weapon aid and other things are coming through the west of Ukraine by trains. So we did have attacks. Actually, we did have one of the rockets attacking the oil facility, only 700 or 800 meters from our brewery, which gave us, of course, a bit of a scare.
Okay.
But I know at least 4 breweries, and I know at least one cidery that were totally either destroyed or occupied. Well, more than 4, of course. Yeah. I'm just giving you the facts about how it is in Ukraine, and it's not about and how it is happening to my business, and it's not a complaint because we are lucky to be in Lviv. We are lucky that our army has demonstrated a very strong position. And generally, I think generally in Ukraine, with all the blood and tears and all the suffering and all the bad TV picture here that everyone sees almost every evening on TV, there is a huge unification and huge mobilization of the nation for a very bad reason, of course. I wish this was a unification about some cultural events or about some other things, some super businesses that come out of here or something like this. But if it's a war, we have to fight. We have to fight it. We have no way to freeze it. We have no way to leave it to our kids or to the kids of our kids.
Sure.
We have actually been fighting this war for 400 years. The Russians always tried to attack the Ukrainian identity since the Cossack times, since medieval ages. And it was always kind of sleeping dormant here and there. It was dormant under the Tsar. It was torn between Russia and Poland in 700s, 800s. Ukraine was pretty much like the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Yeah. Ukraine was occupied in the early 20s. And this was, we were part of the Soviet Union, and there are many generations that lived under the occupation. But this is the end of the occupation. We are not going to let this just freeze. We are not going to let it, we are not going to cede territories. This is our country. We have not much place to go, and there is no need for us to go anywhere. So that's why the Russians have totally failed. Yeah, they wanted to take over Ukraine in 3 days. It won't, even in 3 years or even in 3 decades now, they won't be able to succeed here. Because now, even like small breweries like us, small other businesses, taxi drivers, bakers, businessmen, entrepreneurs, office rats, whoever is now a volunteer, a fighter, whether it's on the front, really shooting, or programming for locating targets, or making drones, kamikaze drones, or something. Everybody is a fighter now. Everybody is a soldier, whether it's right on the front or whether it's like here, probably about 1,000 kilometers from the active fighting.
That's another thing I wanted to ask. What about your brewery stuff? Is it? Do you have employees that are going to active fighting battlegrounds that leave the brewery and come back, or is the team together like before?
No, we have a few people, young guys, well under 30, fighting actively. Some of them have been participating. Actually, the war, the whole. I mentioned 300 or 400 years. Yeah, this has been the disputes between Russia and Ukraine. But the actual war started in 2014, and it's been ongoing for 8 years. It's been kind of smaller size. It's not been full scale, but with the takeover of Donetsk and Luhansk in the east in 2014 and Crimea, we were at war. And what we had now on the 24th of February is just turned the existing war into a very active phase. So the point is that we have quite a few people in our big team. And it's really a big team, because with the restaurant and the brewery, and we have opened 9 pubs, which are like Pravda pubs in the city. Our personnel is well over 200 people. So even statistically, you would have a lot of guys who have already participated in the war since 2014. And they were the priority when the government drafted people to the army. So people who have active fighting experience were among the first to be drafted to the active phase of the war. So our bottler, one of our bottlers, very able guy who we miss a lot as a professional, as a nice guy. He is now fighting actively in the east, and he's not the only one. Yeah, we have people who used to run one of our smaller pubs here in Lviv, and he's also fighting there. And it's just a couple of examples. And they're doing different kinds of jobs, from reconnaissance to flying drones, to driving the wounded from the battlefield. So it's different things.
Okay, I have to for just one short second, I have to cut off your video, because the software tells me that our call is going to be interrupted, and I'm trying to prevent that. Give me just a short second. I maybe just talk about
Sure.
The beer I just had. It's the Pilsner, and it's quite dry for a Pilsner, which is reminds me really of a German style Pilsner. And it has a nice hoppiness, but it's not that bitter, and I really like it. So maybe you can tell a little bit about this beer. So maybe to prove my the things I just told. Is it meant to be a dry beer?
Yeah, it's meant to be dry beer. We actually, in our brewery, there is a big phobia. It's a bit of technological, and we dislike sweet beers generally. So for us, mostly sweetness in the beer is sometimes in some beers like triples, or in milk stouts or pastry stouts, sweetness is something you cannot take away just from the beer style, but in beers like basic beer, even blanche beer like Weiss beer, we really try to manage our yeast in the way that it really eats the sugars, and the residual sweetness should be pretty low, because normally if it's a little bit, it's better to make a mistake on the lower sweetness than on the higher sweetness, because if the sweetness is too high, then it's just you are like eating sugar and you don't feel any other taste. When you have dryness, that means your yeast management, in a way, in fermentation is still okay. So you basically know how to deal with your yeast. This Pilsner, by the way, is using Ukrainian malt, and it's using German hops. So it's a bit of a hybrid, yeah. So it's a bit of a Czech, yeah.
This is why it tastes rather familiar, because it has some ingredients I'm quite used to.
Exactly.
That's good.
Yeah, it's a kind of a hybrid between the Czech heritage, German heritage, and Ukrainian heritage because of.
You mentioned the unification of the Ukrainian people caused by the war, but there has not only been a unification of the Ukrainian people. You started a movement amongst the brewers in the Ukraine, or I think it was you, and amongst all brewers around the world. And I'm wearing this T-shirt, "Brew for Ukraine." Can you just briefly explain what this Brew for Ukraine movement was all about, and what the idea behind that was?
Okay, so actually this movement came out of desperation. We, as I mentioned, there was a moment for many weeks, like for maybe 5 to 6 weeks, when we were totally blocked as a small business for a totally understandable reason. Yeah, we supported the alcohol ban in the first weeks of the war, because there was not much about fun, there was not much about alcohol or too much relaxation. Everybody needed to stay very focused. But it meant for us that we no longer can support the families we cannot pay salaries, we don't earn any money. And it's not about even earning money, it's just about keeping the business alive, but mostly keeping the families with some income stream. Yeah? And we are totally blocked, because if you want to export your beer, it does take time. Exporters, your importers in other countries, okay, we have a good long-standing relationship with Calais in Austria, in Salzburg.
Yes.
And I think it's but in the first weeks, the borders were closed. We would not even dare to send our beer through the border, because the border was crowded with hundreds of thousands of refugees, and our beer truck would look totally, let's say, totally illogical.
Again, the connection is getting weak.
Yeah, so this was the time to evacuate people, families. We were stuck.
Yeah, we were stuck, but I got you that you didn't export the beer because you don't want your lorries to block refugees from crossing the borders.
Sure, of course, yeah. Well, yeah, it was full of buses, full of trains, full of transportation for the refugees. And we were stuck, and we had this idea, okay, we could not even go out to, for example, to our friends in Belgium, Czech Republic, US, or anywhere to brew collabs, to do some earning for our employees, our collaborations. And the way to do it is we decided to open our recipes to the breweries of the world, and we also opened our visuals, our labels in high resolution format, including the Putin label that you were showing. And we said to the brewers of the world, hey, these are our recipes. We are the brewery that is in a war zone. This is the brewery which is welcoming everyone to brew our beers, and we selected the recipes that have already won medals, either at the European Beer Star, and we said, okay, if you sell that beer, that's our recipe, that's our technology, that's part of what we do, but we cannot sell it. Please sell it and send your donations to either to us, and we quickly we turned them into food for refugees, for software for targeting, for tactical clothes for our employees and for other people in the army. We bought it's probably now almost probably 10 pickup trucks for the army, which is a very much needed thing, because it's transporting small groups here and there. It takes out the wounded from the field. It takes some light arms to the field. And actually, some of our employees have actually finally received clothes or arms or pickup trucks for them to use at the front lines. And we actually did not expect much from this. We know some breweries in the world. We had some collabs here and there in the US, and we said, okay, something between 10 or maybe 20 breweries would say, yeah, we're gonna brew. Became a huge flash mob, and we ended up with brewing our recipes and sending money to different charities, to us here, to Red Cross, to UNICEF, for kids, for food, for any refugee relief efforts. Some people who were more willing to be a little bit on the aggressive side, they specifically donated for strengthening the arm thing, donating to the Ukrainian army. Some people who are a little bit more peaceful in their minds, they donated to the refugee efforts. And all in all, the estimate of the curators of this program in the US, they estimate that the total amounts donated was somewhere between 2.2 to 2.4 million US or euro now.
Wow.
Which I think has demonstrated how, to me, it demonstrated two things. First, people really stand with us. It demonstrated that the craft beer community is not an indifferent community. It's a passionate, professional community that wants to help, that identify, fight for freedom and fight for your self-expression is pretty much in the craft beer. Yeah, it's also a fight against the traditional channels or mass beers. That's one thing. Another thing, it's a little bit more about the charity structure. If we would say, just, guys, donate to us or donate to Ukraine, it would probably have not yielded. But the breweries that joined this movement, they have provided to common people in Australia, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in US, in Canada, in Brazil. They provided a very nice channel to donate. You drink your beer, and you this simple act of almost everyday life, you feel that you are helping someone who needs help.
Yeah.
So the structure has turned out to be a very efficient one.
And I got an email this morning from Canada, from Vern, and most likely you know him, and he said that people who are interested in this movement should check the website brewforukraine.beer, and they are providing an international map where you can see all the breweries that are near your hometown or all around the world that brewed at least one beer for this movement. So if you're watching from Canada, from the US, from Asia, from whatever on this planet, please check out brewforukraine.beer. You'll find a very detailed map that Vern just mentioned to me in his email, and you can find out the brewery nearest to you. And I found out, and it's actually a shame, that there's no Austrian brewery on this map. So I will put all my efforts and contact my brewing friends tomorrow to encourage them to at least brew one beer each brewery for this movement, and I'm pretty sure we'll have Austria on the map within some weeks as well. And I got a question from the viewers who join us in the chat, and it seems that there's a brewer who would like to brew a beer, and the question is this project still going on? Are breweries still invited to join? I'm pretty sure that they are, right?
Sure. Yes. We have a website of our brewery, of our whole Pravda community. It's Pravda through V like this,
Yes.
Pravda.Beer. That's our website. Beer with double E. And on this website we have a page which is describing this. We call it a victory series of the beer. I can send this to you, Martin, and then if you are kind enough, you can later put it down under the chat.
Sure.
Under this conversation.
For sure.
In the comments. Yes, it's open, so please do join. We need Ukrainian heritage beers everywhere. So far, about 2/3 of the brewers that joined are in US and Canada together. But as I mentioned, we have breweries in Vietnam, in Indonesia, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Japan, in Brazil, in most of European countries. So I think Austria is only warming up, and I'm sure there will be, of course, Austrian breweries joining.
And but Austria has one good thing, and people were asking just before the interview we're doing today, and they were sending me mails how they can buy your beers, because buying beer is also a way to support Ukrainian breweries, not just Pravda Brewing. There are a lot more breweries in the Ukraine, and they brew incredible beers. And it's Kalea, as you mentioned, in Salzburg, through their website, Beertasting.shop. Beer tasting in the English word .shop, like shopping. And they have a small variety of your beers, and they have 12 packs with varieties of your beers. So if you're living in Germany or in Austria, you can check out their website. And as far as I know, because Kalea is known for the Advent calendar, the Christmas calendar, you will have your beers in there as well. So there will be Pravda even at Christmas time available for beer lovers. But we have talked a lot, or we have already mentioned this beer here, the recent political beer, and it's a very funny image. It's showing, or maybe you can explain what's on there, because it's so detailed and there's so many details on this bottle, and maybe you can introduce us to the history of this beer. Beer style wise, it's a dry hopped golden ale, but
yes,
it's named Putin Hilo. Maybe
yes.
I'm pretty sure Putin understands everybody, and Hulo is not a friendly word, right?
Yeah, it's a, let's say it's a very bad word. I don't know how indecent words I can use on your blog.
Whatever you want.
It basically means a dickhead.
Oh, okay.
So it's a Putin the dickhead, and the origin of this beer is like this. We have as I mentioned before, we wanted to make a statement about the war that is now coming to active phase in February. It's already started. It was just a little bit more position war in the east of Ukraine, and we wanted to have a series of labels that would demonstrate our attitude towards the world politicians that can influence what happens in Ukraine. So we commissioned a Ukrainian artist, Andriy Yermolenko. His name is indicated on the label, to create such series for us. And he's actually he's not the guy on our staff. He's an outside guy, but we pretty much felt that we shared the same view of on the world with him, and we asked him to make these labels. So. Talking about this Putin label, it shows Putin and Dmitry Medvedev, who was then either the president or his prime minister, doesn't really matter in Russia. He sits like a small kid on his lap. Yeah, he sits on his lap. Small kid, little green men that occupied Crimea or something. So these little green men are also on the label. And I have the white trucks, which are humanitarian convoys that Russia used to send weapons to Crimea and to the east of Ukraine. Yes, they're covered in blood because that's what because they carry weapons instead of humanitarians.
And now we're scrambled again. We can't hear you at the moment.
It's true to Russian nature. And they have a funny image of the fugitive and corrupt Ukrainian. Okay, I tried.
No. You're back again. It's okay. Changing. But you're talking about this guy here.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. This is a funny image of former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych that made a huge joke of himself. He's a fugitive guy in Russia. And by the way, when Russia was attacking Kyiv, they brought Yanukovych to Minsk, closer to the Ukrainian border, and readied him to take over power because he was the guy that they keep him as a funny animal in Rostov in Russia, just for the case when they ever reinstall the government, so that they have a spare president to put back, which is a Russian loyalist. Funny thing in itself. So this label is in a way is telling him, and it's a very contemporary and actual label even for now, because it just for us it shows that Russia has started this whole thing 8 years ago. It didn't start it on the 24th of February.
Yeah, that's what most people forget, that the war actually started in 2014 with the invasion on Crimea. So
yes,
it's going on for a long time, and but it's also showing a soldier. It's also showing the oil. It's also showing the gas. So it was some kind of you were running ahead with your imagination what this war might be all about, because now in Europe everybody's scared about the upcoming winter, about the gas, about the oil from Russia that might be cut off by Putin. But I think this is the price you have to pay, even if you're living in a country like Austria, Germany, or whatever in Europe, to support the Ukrainian people in their fight for the freedom that, in the end, is the freedom for everyone in Europe. So we have to a little bit think ahead, and not only concentrate on what's going on in our garden or in our city. It's more than that. So
there is another way to think about this. You know, I understand that the whole thing is really touching on everyone's household.
Yeah.
But you also a little bit have to think about 30 innocent people that died in Vinnytsia, which is not even in the fighting zone. It's a beautiful town in the middle of Ukraine, and 30 people, including kids, were killed just by doing their things, just by shopping, by visiting the medical center, just by walking in the street or driving their cars past the shopping mall. Same happened in Kyiv. Same happened in Kharkiv. Happens actually almost every day. And then nobody canceled basic human morale, basic human doing good, and if you think what finances Putin's shelling and Putin's weapons, it's also pretty much the European money that every household pays to stay warm, and this is something that probably is a bitter wake-up call for many countries that actually, a lot thanks to Angela Merkel, slept through the appearance of a new, let's say it very softly, a new very evil guy who just wants to rule his 140 million empire for the rest of his life, as he has been doing for over 20 years now. And for many people, it sounds like a joke, but it is not a joke. The country, Russia, if you look at this, it's if you look at its GDP, if you look at its history that's been stolen from Ukraine to a big deal, and it's been also stolen from the other small nations that have been conquered, killed, and taken over by Russia over the course of hundreds of years. Then, if you think about this, it's actually a naked king in many ways, yeah. And it's also pretty much a huge tanking station that has suddenly gone mad. And it's using its gas and oil to blackmail you guys here in Austria and guys in Italy, and it's been using this money to buy politicians, journalists, TV stations, and opinion leaders, and that can last for some time, but it cannot last forever. And if Ukraine has to stop it, we will. We don't want this, but the Ukrainian army is now probably one of the most efficient armies in the world that's been tested for 8 years in active combat. As I mentioned before, there is no way we're going to give up our territories, and there is no way we're going to become part of Russia. It's been enough for the last many, many years.
But I just tasted this beer, and I must say, the story that you just told about this beer, you really can taste it. It has 27 IBUs, but to me, the hops and the bitterness is so much more intense in this beer. It's hopped with Magnum, Perle, and Saphir, which is all three bitter hops. And they are really, really nice in this beer. It's definitely a beer for people who enjoy bitter beers, but it's not like other more fruity IPAs. It's a really down-to-earth, straight and bitter beer. It has a nice little citrus lemon aroma, but it's it's balanced in a way, but unbalanced in another way. But I really, really like it. And I saw you got a medal in the Czech Republic for this beer, the World Beer Idol in 2018. It's a really nice one. I really can recommend this beer if people are interested in buying beers. This should be definitely on the list.
Yeah, it's dry hop. Actually, Saphir is used in this beer for dry hopping, so it provides much more aroma than bitterness here. And it is a hoppy beer in a way, but because part of the hops is used for cold hopping, it does not give away so much bitterness, but it still sticks with aroma. And out of most of our beers, for me, this beer needs the good occasion a little bit more than some others. For example, the Pilsner that you tasted first, you can actually go along with it for the whole day because it's just a basic rounded up, slightly bitter Pilsner. For this beer, I would rather recommend a slightly colder evening, a little bit more thoughtful consumption, because after all, with all its easiness to drink, thanks to a little sweetness as well there, this beer is 8% alcohol.
And you don't feel the 8%. It's very, very dangerous from that point. Yeah. Because it's really not that heavy as you would expect a 8% beer to be. So it's rather easy drinking.
Yes. Yes.
And we have, at the moment, we have 38 degrees in Vienna today, not tonight, but what is the weather like in Lviv at the moment?
It's pretty much the same. It's I think it was up to 34 today, so it's a very hot day.
So the heat wave has all of us in its clams and where everybody is affected of the heat. So if people live in Germany and Austria, there's a good source for your beers. But you mentioned that you're shipping to the US, you're shipping to other parts of the world, which is a good way to get your beers. Can people order through your online store, or do they have to watch out at their local beer dealers for your beer to arrive?
The best idea is to subscribe to our Instagram or Facebook page for Pravda Brewery or Pravda Beer Theatre, whichever. Pravda Brewery is probably going to be a little easier, and that on our social media. We still do not have regular presence more or less everywhere, but we have shipments to Germany. By the way, something I want to mention to our viewers is that there is another very elegant way that was somehow appeared from cooperation with a couple of German guys from.
The name is scrambled. The name is scrambled. So you have to repeat the name. The name was scrambled.
And sound, I assume, also is okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. But we couldn't hear the name of the nice guys that selling you beers.
I didn't mention the name yet.
Okay.
So these guys have the video studio in Berlin.
Okay.
And they were kind enough to come to Ukraine a couple of months ago with some medical and other humanitarian supplies like food, tools, diesel generator, and other things. And then they said, okay, we are going with the minibus anyway. Well, with the bus anyway, bringing all these supplies. So why don't we buy like 1,000 bottles of some beer with a specific label that we can bring back, sell, and reinvest that money from selling for buying. We have developed a specific beer label. It's called Tractor Beer. The guys said everybody in Germany loves tractors. And it has this image of a Ukrainian tractor towing away a wounded Russian tank, a dead Russian tank. And we developed this label, and in the first shipment, these guys took 1,000 bottles only. And then in a matter of a couple of weeks, they reordered 10,000 bottles, almost 10,000 bottles. So, and this beer is now supplied to nightclubs, to football clubs, because these guys have good connections to them. And also they deliver to cafes and to restaurants and to pubs. And now they are now preparing a third humanitarian aid convoy using the proceeds from the first 2 shipments of our beer. And we even put on the label that €2 from each of these bottles will be directed towards humanitarian aid. And for me, it's a beautiful way. Actually, these guys help Ukraine twice. First, they buy our beer at a fair price. Yeah, it's not very expensive, but still, it's a fair price that it supports us as a small brewery. It supports the families of our employees. But then they sell it at a markup in Germany. At a fair price for an imported beer, and reusing the proceeds to buy more humanitarian aid and help Ukraine. If you have German listeners, please, and there is, I think, if you just Google it, Tractor Beer, we sent 2 beer styles. One is a Blanche, Belgian style Blanche, very easy to drink, 4.5% alcohol. Another one is a Pilsner, the one that you just had, but under a different label. We did not have time to create a whole new recipe, which we could. So we just used our Pilsner, which I think is a good beer for Germany and for anything. And this is how it also works for charity, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Pilsner is a very, very popular beer style in Germany. Also in Austria. Austria is more on the Märzen side. But Pilsner is very popular here as well, and the Helles, for example, is getting more popular. Yeah. So people start getting back into the lager beers. So I think sending a nice lager beer, a nice Pilsner to Berlin, I think you nailed it, and you nailed the taste of the people there. So definitely.
Do you have a beer in front of you out of our beers which is called Crazy Cow? By any chance?
Yes, I do have it. It's still in the fridge. I will give me a second, and I will get it out. I just had it this afternoon because normally when I do an interview, I try to tease with a beer to the interview, and I had this beer, and I found out that there's a very, very funny story. I actually didn't understand. It's about a brewer going to Spain, finding a cow, and digging for mushrooms, and poisonous mushrooms, and
Yes.
the cow is kind of going crazy and telling funny stories, and the brewer takes her home to Ukraine, and she's now working in a kindergarten telling funny stories to children. Is it more or less the story?
You nailed it. Yes. Well, actually, you're right. But this is actually another cooperation with another artist from a Ukrainian city, which is about 120 kilometers south from Lviv. The beer is called Crazy Cow, and it's Petro Buyak, a Ukrainian graphic designer and a painter, who has put together this label, and he has put together this text. And we decided it's so crazy and it's so weird that we decided to just let it stay on the label. Even though we ourselves, we don't fully understand what this guy meant, but he's an actor, he's an artist, so we just let him express himself. The reason I mentioned this beer to you, Martin, is that we were talking about the beer tastes in Austria, and this is our Vienna lager.
It's a Vienna lager, yes.
I love a lot. Yeah, it's a Vienna lager, and for me, so go ahead.
But to be honest, it's a Vienna lager, no doubt about that. But it's the most challenging Vienna lager I had in a long time. If people would expect a normal, easy peasy Vienna lager, this is not the one. This is really challenging and a little bit hop influenced Vienna lager, because Vienna lager normally isn't that hoppy. This is another story, but with the story of this crazy cow, I think people will understand why the beer is like it is. So
that was the intention, and it has 6% alcohol, which is also a little bit on the higher side.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a beer style that Austrians definitely are used to, and this is another beer. And actually, I have three more, and I know two of them already. You do have more or less every beer style in your range, but none of the beers I had so far is boring normal. It's always having some kind of funny twist and surprising ingredients, or you always surprise people. And I thought that the name Pravda Beer Theatre might be also about surprising people with your beers, because you're telling stories, you're bringing labels to life, you're telling stories with your labels, and you have kind of uncommon experiences with a beer like this Vienna lager, which is not a common Vienna lager at all, but still, this is a really good one.
Thank you. Actually, Pravda, the name of Pravda comes from the desire to tell people here in Ukraine the truth about beer. There is a common, especially with people who still lived through some Soviet Union years or early years after the Soviet Union. Many people here believe that real, live, fresh beer should go bad very quickly. There is a long story to this myth, because before the technology of common beer making here in the Soviet Union when it existed, Czech technology, because Czech Republic was in the orbit of the Soviet Union, so they took very cheap technology without too much sanitation, And this technology was taken in the 30s and 40s, in 1930s, 1940s, and these same beer factories, they existed until the fall of the Soviet Union. So people got trained, especially in such heat, you know, and people still have in mind that like fresh, you know, fresh beer should go bad because it's natural. Because if your beer can stand in the fridge or outside of the fridge more than 10 days, then it's probably some chemicals in it, some conservants or some stabilization agents or something, you know. And this was such a it's still you know, our beer is unfiltered, it's not pasteurized, but because of just simple, very meticulous sanitation in the brewery of all your tanks and all your everything, of your bottling line and your hands and your everything. You just have to know your concentrations and temperatures of the washing agent, and then you just sterilize your equipment, and then all our beers are 1 year, can be good for 1 year. And this was one of the most irritating concepts that we faced when we opened the brewery. You know, when people say, "Hey, how, you know, your beer can stand how many weeks, how many days?" And you say 1 year. Oh, it's no good. It's probably no good. You know, I want a beer which is only 3 days. You know, and then because it's like my father drank. So we had lots of misconceptions, and we wanted to face them and convince people otherwise. And we want to tell people the real story, the Pravda, the true story about beers.
And you definitely do this through your beers. We now found out how to get your beers, at least in Berlin, Germany, Austria, and for the US, you have to check your local beer dealer. Maybe ask for Pravda beer. You can buy the advent calendar from Kalea. There will be at least 1 bottle of Pravda beer in the international and the craft beer version, as far as I know from Peter, to support Ukrainian beer brewers. But you also sent me a bank account earlier today, and I put the account number under the video. So you have to scroll down and you will find a bank account for donations in euros and a bank account for donations in US. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about the organization that these donations go to, that people might donate after the video?
Okay. So the translation is a little clumsy, but it's called the Fund of the Free and Caring People, and it's a sister fund of our company that has existed for 11 or 12 years, and this fund sets a goal. Normally, in peaceful time, this fund sets a goal of, for example, buying an X-ray machine for a children's hospital, and then we all put the little boxes in our pubs and restaurants and invite people to donate. We donate ourselves. We always match, like if people collected 1 million hryvnia, we always match it with another. But in war times, this fund has cooked between 3 and 3 million meals for the refugees living in Lviv who have no possibility to cook for themselves or have no money to buy food. So it's between 3 and 4 million meals already handed out in cooperation with the charity called World Central Kitchen. That's one direction, cooking food. This fund uses pretty much spare capacities of the restaurant of Pravda Beer Theatre, for example, to cook food and to give out to the people who need it. That's one direction. Another direction is that this fund helps mothers with children who have serious health issues, terminal diseases or palliative issues, which is like almost similar. And this fund locates these women, these families. It brings them from the east or south of Ukraine, from the active fighting zone, brings them to Lviv, provides them with accommodation, food, and possibility to just come to normal terms after the evacuations. This fund sends these families to Czech Republic. Sometimes it's Spain, depends on the kind of health issue that the kid has. So these are the two directions. If anybody wants to provide donation there, this fund will definitely use this money for a good reason.
So if you like the idea of feeding refugees, donating for X-ray machines, for hospitals, medical equipment and stuff like that, you will find the bank account number below the video, below the live stream in the show notes, and I will put them up after we finish the talk so everybody will find them easily. There's also the link to the beer tasting shop of Kalea, where German and Austrian viewers can buy the beer. And Peter told me that just after we announced the live stream today, they sold about 100 packages of your beer, which was amazing. There will be shortly sold out, but he told me that new beer is on the way. So maybe if the beer is sold out right now, check back in a couple of days, and there will be some more beer from Pravda. And there are also other breweries in the Ukraine who also ship their beer to Germany and Austria and around the world. And they collaborate with breweries, have friends in Poland. Poland is very active in this Brew for Ukraine movement. Mostly every brewery in the craft beer movement has brewed a beer already. Some have brewed twice, and it's really good to know that in times of a crisis, people are staying together and trying to help their neighbors fighting the war. The connection now is getting weaker and weaker, so maybe we come to an end. But I won't let you out giving a prediction, because I had travel plans this year to visit you and your brewery in Lviv and have some beers in the brewery. Do you think I should be planning for next year? Should that be possible, or do you think this thing will go on for a longer time? It's hard to say, huh?
Yeah, it's hard to say. You could still travel here now. It's just logistically a little more difficult. But the city is actually full of various people from the west of Europe. It's people, volunteers, it's journalists, it's just people who are helping here with this or that. Lviv is the safer destination, and we are kind of thinking now whether we should be in a very small and decent and quiet format, whether we should be repeating our craft beer festival that we do normally twice a year.
Okay.
We are thinking whether we try to do it in the end of September or early October. With, of course, the proceeds would go to the Ukrainian army to support the fighting effort. So let's keep in touch on that.
Yeah.
And see what happens. I think the estimate, the super optimistic estimate, is that this war ends by the year end, and maybe it lasts for another. In the pessimistic case, it may last till the middle of next year, so another year. But the thing is, one of the reasons that it might take a little longer. The Russians put it very easily. You just you capitulate. That's not an option. We don't even want to discuss that option. Nobody wants to discuss that option. Even people who are like Russian friendly, or people who were like saying, they are like our brothers, all these fake things from the past. Now the unification is around is against the common enemy. Of course, you cannot rebuild, but unification will stay about different goals, about how to rebuild this country, about how to make sure it's built around democracy, because we're actually fighting. We are fighting partly your war as well. We are fighting for the good of this world. We are fighting for the cause of Taiwan, for the cause of Poland, for the cause of the Baltic states. We are on the good side, and I think that's the reason that the world is helping us. The Germany, you can see it in people buying our beers. You see it in people sending us arms. In Polish people supporting Ukrainian families to such a heart-touching level. You see it everywhere. I wish Ukraine was in the news for a different reason, as I mentioned, for great inventions, for great entrepreneurs, for great companies, for great products, for great art. But if my generation has the chance to fight
so yes, already.
And even if it takes another year for that, I'd rather take another year now than have my kids and my grandkids suffer and lose.
So we're really facing troubles with the internet connection now again. I think I have to thank you a lot for taking your time and giving us an inside view on the current situation in Ukraine, Yuri. We had lots of possible ways to support Pravda Brewing and the organization you just mentioned, feeding people, providing medical equipment for hospitals. So if people want to donate, please check out the show notes below the video and check out your local craft beer store for Ukrainian beer. Any money helps, and any beer you buy helps Ukrainian people. And Yuri, once again, thank you very much. I hope my travel plans will turn out quite soon, that we can meet face to face in Lviv and try your beer in the Pravda Beer Theatre. I would really love to do that. Thank you for taking your time, and I just can say, stay safe. We stand with Ukraine, and fuck this guy down there. Thank you very much, and have a good night, everybody. You will find everything below the show notes, and have a good night, and please support the Ukraine. See you later. Cheers.